There is no game series I adore more than Super Mario himself. These games make up a huge part of my childhood, whether that's playing New Super Mario Bros. During car rides or discovering Super Mario World with emulation. So to celebrate the fact that I hit 6,000 subscribers, today I'll be ranking every mainline 2D Mario game. The games will be ranked on how much I like them. This list will be entirely my opinion, with a sprinkle of the analysis you've come to expect. Now, which games actually count for this ranking? The Super Mario Wiki defines a ton of games as part of the mainline, but some of these need to be weeded out. None of the ports or remasters will be considered, as they're usually just the same game with better graphics and some extra features. And also these 4 games. Yeah, they're technically part of the mainline, but these two don't feature a controllable human being, and the Maker games are very unique experiences that can't really be compared. Okay, without further hold up, let's get into it. And strap in, this is gonna be a long one. Here's the plot, okay? This game has some of the most creative enemies, interesting settings, and unique set of mechanics out of any Mario game. But right before it was released, some sick fuck at Nintendo decided to release Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. Oh, good God. Mario Land honestly fails at the few things that make up a fun game. This is a Mario game with bad physics. That is a phrase that should never be uttered out of a man's mouth. For some reason, he falls so quickly when walking off ledges, but your jumping velocity is that same familiar descent. It creates this weird feeling where you don't think you can make it to another ledge, when in reality, you can jump an entire screen length. And the level design doesn't really do much to compensate. If you like jumping on moving platforms over bottomless pits, boy, do I have the game for you. Other than that though, most of Mario Land's issues come down to the hardware it's stuck on. Pipe bonus rooms are repeated, there's barely any interactive elements, and there are only 4 worlds with 3 levels each. Of course, if you lose all your lives, you get sent back to the beginning, which is incredibly frustrating, as many of the levels rely on waiting to drain your stamina. But like I said at the beginning, this is probably one of the most creative Mario games to ever release. It's set in the original country of Sarasaland, which is complete with its own individual kingdoms. Instead of a plains or desert world, you got ancient Egypt and Easter Island. The enemies range from Koopa and Goomba substitutes to flying Moai statues and stationary sphinxes. The bosses, while all simple, are a huge step up from the others from this era. 1 and 2 made you fight Bowser 8 to 12 times, but here we got Dragon Zamasu, King Torumetsu, and Hioihoi, which I'm pretty sure is just a sound Doodlebob makes. They're all very unique, with some being traditional platforming challenges and others needing to be taken down in Mario's plane or submarine. These have gotta be the best sections of Super Mario Land. All of a sudden, the weird physics don't matter as you're thrust into a pretty simple, albeit fun, side-scrolling shooter. This game is just a silly, goofy guy, but that's kind of a breath of fresh air. In the modern day, where Nintendo is incredibly protective with their IPs, trading in original characters for hordes of toads, seeing a running stonehead with fists named Toko Toko is pretty cool. You can jump on flying seahorses and Chinese ghouls. I'd love to see this level of originality pumped back into the 2D series, which in recent years has barely added anything of note to the Mario universe. You really don't have to play this game though, it's still been horribly destroyed by the passage of time. Just read the manual or something. It has classic lines such as, if Super Mario or Super Ball Mario are touched by an enemy, they simply go back to being a regular Mario, which, come on man, you gotta have better self-esteem than that. Okay, so remember that guy, that horrible psycho that locked a creative Mario project onto the Game Boy? Yeah, the Lost Levels are that guy's passion project. Mario 2 is essentially the first troll game. You've got the poison mushroom, which kills you if you collect it, unforgiving level design, and most infamously, warp pipes that send you backwards. If all of the other titles are a loving group of friends who will console you after you say life isn't worth living, the Lost Levels will immediately tell you to kill yourself. There are 2 types of hard levels in this game, hard but doable and level C3. A level like 8-4 has a lot of elements contributing to the difficulty. There's tight jumps onto a pipe below, a swimming section with bloopers and fire bars, a confusing layout, and 2 Bowsers at the end, one of which can only be defeated with a fire flower. It's extremely hard and frustrating, but at least it's all stuff you've seen before. I will never forgive the person who coded C3. I'm not sure if this is the father of win levels, but if it is, that would make a lot of sense because there has never been a good win level. Here, you have to make constant leap of faith jumps from spring to spring as you pray you land in the right spot. You can kinda tell where you're gonna land since Mario and Luigi always stay at the center of the screen, but even if you do, you have to deal with this Lakitu who's constantly throwing out Spinies at the perfect height to land on. And the worst part is, this was still before save games were the standard. Lose in the late stages and feel yourself dying as you have to suffer through the entire game again. I barely have anything positive to say about this game, but if I have to, it's that A, it looks much better than the original despite minimal improvement, B, it controls like a Mario game, which means it's really precise, but most importantly, it's really memorable. These levels would not belong in any other Mario game due to how actually hard they are. It gives the Lost levels a very distinct flavor from the rest of the franchise, and that's a positive it has over a few of the competently designed platformers. Still, at the end of the day, I remember first finding out that Japan thought Americans weren't good enough to beat the Lost levels and being mad. But now I realize they were just trying to save us. Get this thing away from me, Jesus Christ. Despite my intense nostalgia for the game, Wii is the worst out of the new series, and it's pretty much not even close. I will never forgive this game for being the one to reintroduce the Koopalings. Look, we love Bowser, we stan a family-breeding king, but his kids suck. The problem is twofold. Number one, hitting them makes them turn into my favorite childhood toy and makes you wait. If you jump on them right at the end of this, you can just skip the attack cycle. This is bad design because it's not very hard to skip their cycles at all. Unless you decide to turn on Rumble and put a Wii remote up your ass, which I mean, I get it, you're gonna hit this vulnerable window every single time. Number two though, if you choose not to skip the attack cycle, the fight gets even worse. It's all just waiting, and waiting is not fun. I know Mario 3 introduced them, but that game was made when like toasters were considered advanced technology. I'll give it a pass. On the other hand, the one good boss in the game might be the best in the franchise. Giant Bowser is a Mario boss fight done right, because honestly, it barely is a boss fight. It's a platforming gauntlet with an extremely memorable gimmick. And that's okay. It tests way more what the player has learned than jumping on the guy from the Salt Company. The overall level design is good. Just good. I would talk about some of the levels, but none of them really stand out in the good or bad direction. Except for maybe World 2 Castle, that's gotta be one of the worst auto-scrollers known to man. You have to guess the correct path, and the screen scrolls so terribly slow that it's barely a challenge and it's more tedious. One thing Wii does master though is movement. Mario moves exactly how you want him to, with some extra tricks that take some time to learn. In particular, the triple jump, which is a satisfying maneuver to pull off, but requires a decent amount of momentum to get started. In fact, I would say that playing this game with your thumb permanently stuck to the one button was the way it was meant to be experienced. With the skips found in 1-3, 5 Ghost, and 8-2, the amount of levels you actually need to complete in the game is very few. When blasting through them, you get to enjoy the levels for the simple obstacle courses they really are. Speedrunners make it to Bowser in less than 30 minutes, and even your inexperienced ass can complete it in a short afternoon. New Super Mario Bros. Wii is like potato chips. They're not the best, and yeah, it can get mindless, but at the same time, I kinda like potato chips. Here we have the one that started it all. We have to be grateful for this game for introducing a bunch of the most iconic parts of the Mario series, including Goombas, Buzzy Beetles, Spinies, Lakitu, Cheep Chiefs, Bloopers, Hammer Bros, Piranha Plants, Toad, Princess Peach, and Bowser. Tons of the most iconic music pieces too. If you went to one of those remote island villages and played 1-1, they would probably say, "How did you get into my house?" in a language you have no chance of understanding. The actual gameplay is pretty much what you would expect. Mario handles great with a satisfying jump arc and none of the weird falling from Mario Land. Your dash puts you at this perfect speed where you always want to push forward. Really, I'd say that Super Mario Bros. Is almost the design that Wii was looking to emulate. With the skips found in 1-2 and 4-2, just 8 levels stand between you and Bowser. It is extremely short, but that's almost to its benefit. With good play, you could beat Super Mario Bros. Around 10 times in one afternoon. It's a perfect bite-sized experience for you to sink a couple hours into and master. All I'm saying is that there's a reason why this guy is the most famous Italian. New Super Mario Bros. 2 is a really confusing game. On one hand, you would think it would stand out due to the coin collecting mechanic it seems to be focused on. On the other hand, 2 doesn't really put enough effort into making coin collecting exciting. Most of the time you're doing the same thing as in other games to spawn in or grab coins. This includes running into coins, and running into coins. The additions that line this mechanic are the gold flower, gold ring, and gold block. These are the only things that have remotely any fun factor to them. The gold flower is probably the best out of the 3. They're extremely rare, so finding one means holding it for as long as possible. If you do, you're rewarded with a one-shot kill on most enemies and it transforms most things into cash. It'd be perfect if you didn't lose it at the flagpole. The gold ring is just whatever. It gives a limited amount of time where most enemies will spawn treasure, especially Koopas, where kicking their shell creates rows of wealth. This is all fine, but the main problem is that there is no reason to get all these doubloons. You grab every single dollar in your way, but all you get is like a statue or something. Coins do the same thing they always have, the only difference being the fact that they're absolutely everywhere. Oh yeah, and they didn't change the amount it takes to gain an extra life, so you end up generating more extra bodies than the managers of a sweatshop. If the act of collecting them isn't fun and the rewards aren't worth it, why should I as a player engage with the loot grabbing aspect? I think that's why the Gold Rush mode works so well. Each of the packs is in stages of 3, which is just long enough to feel replayable, but just short enough to encourage one more run. You can collect up to 30,000 smackaroos, with almost everything granting you some form of dough. It's all under a time limit too, so you have to maximize your income while still making it to a flagpole, as hitting the top doubles your profit. By just changing styles and embracing the more arcade-focused gameplay this entry seems to be pushing, the Gold Rush packs encourage mastery of levels, replayability, and coin collecting, because it's fun now. Then you look at the base game and it's like, why are you making me fight the Koopalings again? Do they have an allowance? Clearly not if they carpool everywhere. It is for that reason that I think New Super Mario Bros. 2 suffers the most from the series it was made in. It is a hyper-competently designed game. It is sticking to a formula, and that formula definitely works. But if New Super Mario Bros. 2 wasn't made in the new series, it could have been something special. But it has to be like potato chips. Also, this segment made me find 100 different ways to say coins. In a series with more than a few black sheep, Super Mario Bros. 2 stands out even among them as a fever dream of a game. The infamous reskin of Doki Doki Panic actually works extremely well as a Mario game. It brought in Toad and Princess Peach as playable characters for the first time, and honestly, despite the fact that they were shoehorned into these positions, the character attributes actually work really well and have persisted throughout the series. It can work as a built-in difficulty slider, as Peach is much more forgiving than Toad's short jump. One thing I always adored about this game was the health system. Every level you start off with 2 units of health, with each hit taking out 1. It is your job to find mushrooms throughout the stages to build a higher and higher damage tolerance. It made me actually look around the levels, trying to find potion doors and digging up every turnip from the ground. And speaking of the levels, there is a lot of genuinely cool level design to be found here. You can step on most enemies without taking damage, so platforming on the heads heads of foes as possible. You have to grab keys from urn pipes while a face chases you down through the level. Certain sections become puzzle platformers as you have to stack blocks or take out certain enemies to progress forward. Mario 2 is really cool, but of course if it's ranked here, it's gotta have some problems. Most enemies have to be taken out in 2 parts. You jump on them, pick them up, and throw them at something else. Or I guess that's 3, but whatever. Unless you have something like the POW block or a star, this is the flow of combat. Having the process be elaborate is good and leads to some engaging boss fights, but in normal gameplay, you'll be avoiding enemies a lot more than you'll be engaging with them. And I hope you like fighting transgender icon Birdo because that's all you'll be doing. Yes, she gets some new attacks throughout the journey, but it's the same story every time. Pick up an object and throw it at her. You'll get sick of it around the 8th time it happens. Some of the digging and climbing sections can get quite repetitive. It's just screens upon screens of hitting one button, with maybe an enemy or 2 to dodge. Not to mention, Super Mario Bros. 2 can just be confusing. A lot of the game looks the exact same, the only differentiators being an enemy or door placement. I haven't gotten lost per se, but I've definitely spent some time meandering while dodging fire from enemies. You would think that Super Mario Bros. 2 in parentheses American version would be a bad game. This is a decent sprite job done over a game with hit characters Mama and Papa, but somehow I like Mario 2 a lot. It's definitely one of the most unique platformers I've ever played, and I think it deserves credit for that. New Super Mario Bros. DS. It's the launch title that felt fresh in 2006, and now that there's 3 titles just like it, we look upon it with disdain. I ranked it here at 6th place. Does that mean I think it has better level design than Wii or 2? No, not really. Are the bosses better than other games? Kinda. No, the only reason DS sits this high is the greatest multiplayer experience known to man. Mario vs. Luigi. This game mode was fucked. I've seen friendships destroyed over Mario vs. Luigi. I've seen a man stabbed over Mario vs. Luigi. This is the type of game where you'd play a guy and if he lost, you would get your full name and home address in the form of a PictoChat message. So what exactly makes it so fun? Well, the concept is incredibly simple. Gather stars and whoever reaches the goal wins. The clever thing though is that this sideshow preys on your natural competitiveness. Whether you wanted to or not, every action you do knocks a star out of your opponent. Jumping on them, throwing fireballs, even bumping into them will send your now ex-friend into tumble. The first time you brush it off, the second time you take it kinda personally, and all of a sudden, nobody cares about the objective. It's now about who can screw the other person over more. Star spawns are common ground that bring the 2 warring parties in striking distance. Plus coins and items are things to be fought over. Getting a fire flower is like actually owning a loaded firearm. You have to run for dear life to not get burnt and humiliated. The best part is it's always anyone's game. If Mario's at 9 and Luigi's at 5, it's just 2 or 3 jumps away from being even. The scramble for the last few stars on the map is exhilarating. Each contender is trying to keep their distance to keep their lead, but if you don't rush, you can just lose in the lame way. Now there are some balance issues to be fair. When one bro grabs a shell, you kinda just have to hope they mess up or pray you get an invincibility star. And out of the 5 completely unique maps, I really only play on the pipe one and the crushing one. Mario vs. Luigi is the perfect example of going the extra mile. The expected multiplayer mode would probably just be playing the actual game side by side, or a set of mini games. Oh wait, they did that too. There are full-price titles that are less memorable than the mini-games New Super Mario Bros. Comes packaged with. Back-to-back-to-back classics like Bob-omb Squad, Hide and Boo Seek, and Trampoline Time. And you cannot forget about the 3 kings. Wanted, Sort or Splode, or any of the card games with this cheating bastard on the other side of the table. I now realize these games were probably the source of my social anxiety, regular anxiety, and gambling addiction respectively. The side content of DS was incredibly well made and polished. I wish games today were released with as much content as New Super Mario Bros. Did. Oh, what do I think about the main game? So you know potato chips, right? New Super Mario Bros. U is the Mario of Mario games. Everything the others do, U does on par or better. Well, that's not completely true. The one aspect it goes absolutely hard on is the map. The interconnected map gives the game a lot more life and charm. You've got secret exits, branching paths, and levels scattered everywhere off the beaten path. There are so many levels in this game that they ran out of numbers. Now we got Acorn Plains Blooper, Layer Cake Desert Ice Block, and Sparkling Waters Leaf. I prefer this system over a cannon or a warp pipe. With those, finding secret exits meant playing less of the game, but now platforming challenges are locked specifically behind exploration. You've got some great standout levels here too. You've got the Beanstalk, the Van Gogh painting, and World War II. The march back into Peach's castle is such a highlight, with that once familiar location being in a fiery haze in the background at all times. For once you actually get to see Bowser's sheer size, not in a sex way, as your arena is out in the open for the final battle. I dare say Mario U also has the thing to combat the side content that is Mario vs. Luigi, in the form of challenges. They start off really short and inoffensive, but by the end, they have some of the most creative platforming seen yet. Bubble Up and Castle Crawl are super hard, but display such creativity and fun that I had no problem trying them over and over. Most of these have levels of failure too, with the gold, silver, and bronze medals, allowing for less skilled players to enjoy with less stress. Essentially, New Super Mario Bros. U is the perfection of the basic Mario formula. It doesn't do anything particularly revolutionary, but what it does is offer consistent, fantastic quality. If you're looking to hop into the 2D Mario series, this is your best starting point. At number 63, we got Super Mario 63. This is a certified Newgrounds classic. It's the hottest game around. Everybody's playing it during computer lab. You can't read any of the text because it's yellow on yellow. The movement is kinda hype though. By far, the best entry into the new Super Mario Bros. Series is the fucking $20 DLC made in the year of Luigi. New Super Luigi U is the equivalent of taking an everyday bag of potato chips, but uh-oh, someone laced everything with 100% pure crack. The main change is that all the levels are 100 seconds long. Every level is now a compact romp of challenges that encourages just rushing straight ahead. Luigi controls differently with his long slide and high jumps. This is such a genius design decision because, fun fact, if you never stop running in one direction, you don't have to deal with his wonky physics. In other games, missing a star coin and a dreaded auto-scroller was like, good luck kid, now you have to wait 2 minutes before you can even attempt to see it. With this new system, most levels are easily completed in 50 seconds or less, giving you even more of a reason to keep coming back. You know how the best parts of some games was just barreling to the end and knocking out the game in an hour? Yeah, you can 100% this one in around 3. It's so focused, and it actually gets difficult before the end in a way that the rest of the series fails to do before their respective extra worlds. And you know what? I don't even mind the bosses this time. It's the exact same thing as U and Wii, however with the countdown, being able to beat down most things in 10 seconds perfectly fits with the theme of the title. It's so strange. Somehow the one entry in the new Super Mario Bros. Series that reuses the most assets, the one that has an identical map to the predecessor, the one that has the exact same soundtrack, is by far the most ambitious modern 2D Mario. Super Mario Land 2, The 6 Golden Coins is the most underrated game I've had the joy of completing. Somehow in just 3 years, the Game Boy went from having a bunch of ideas locked behind technical limitations to actually being able to execute on those creative ideas. Other games might have like an ice world or maybe a mountain section as their mix-up, but here we got Space Zone, Pumpkin Zone, and Turtle Zone. It's like the developers were given free reign to just put Mario wherever they pleased, and in return we get some of the coolest levels on Game Boy. You get attacked by serial killer Goombas and fight sharks. There's a level of thematic progression that is often missing from the straightforward attitude 2D Mario has. For example, the macro zone has Mario shrunk down and makes him go through an anthill, find an entrance into the house with the plumbing, and go through rooms like the attic until you reach the boss. You don't just walk into the space zone, you have to fly in a hippo's snot bubble. Coins for once have a pretty express purpose. You can carry up to 999 of them and spend them at slot machines for extra lives and other goodies. It gives you a reason to actually engage with these levels and find secrets, despite the fact that there's not many extra levels you get out of it. Most secret exits lead to random stages filled with coins, and they act as a respite and reassurance that you'll be able to keep on playing. And avoiding a game over is pretty important. The one knock I was gonna give this game was that every time you lose all your lives, you lose the golden coins that were locked in the boss stages. Then I realized this game gives so many mechanics to make sure this feature isn't frustrating. As usual, all the bosses are really easy 3-hit stompings, but in this case where you might have to play them a few times, it makes sense. Super Mario Land 2 is a fantastic game that I don't think nearly enough people talk about. However, this was the game to introduce this sin against God, so actually this is the worst game ever made. Look, when it comes to 2D Mario discussion, it's gonna boil down to 2 games. Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. Both are highly influential and are definitely above the rest of these titles. So for second place, I gotta give it to Super Mario Bros. 3. Everything positive I said in every other segment applies to this game. That smooth movement, those fun secrets, that traversable map, yeah, that all started here. The amount of mechanical improvements in this game is astounding. Running now has levels to it with the P meter, filling up the more you run down a straight path. Coupled with the new Super Leaf and Tanuki suit, P speed is heavily encouraged. It's just desirable enough where you're always trying to build it up, but the game refuses to give it to you too easily. If you want the definition of a perfect difficulty curve, open up the dictionary and find this Italian man wearing a raccoon on a yellow background. Play this for the first time and you'll find every time you think you've mastered it, the next level knocks the wind right out of your sails. It's like hit after hit after hit with these levels. Angry Sun, Tank Level, Big Bertha, the entirety of Huge Island, which is such a good concept it got used like 20 different times. It is a beautiful package all wrapped up in this neat stage play aesthetic. This is the gold standard on making a 2D platformer, except for the one thing holding it back. In my opinion, there are way too many fucking auto-scrollers. Every single airship just floats along slowly while you're bound to just one screen length. Now these stages are good in their own right, but there's so many of them, and it really limits the potential of the final level of each world. They all act as a mini bullet hell section complete with rows of cannons and flamethrowers alike. They only get more frustrating as the game goes on, with death sending you back to the beginning of the fleet, or worse yet, back to your last broken fortress. Super Mario Bros. 3 is an innovator. We wouldn't have any of this series without the original arcade game, but without 3, the constant quality we expect from the series would be completely lost. It is just held back by a few glaring auto-scrollers. Which means the best 2D Mario platformer is... Super Mario World is a triumph of game design. I won't lie, it doesn't dominate every aspect like you'd expect. Wii has the better finale, Land 2 steals unique location, and it's not like it has better multiplayer than New Super Mario Bros. DS. What Super Mario World does, though, is completely deliver on its premise. This is a living, breathing world. Keys and their respective holes are littered everywhere, unlocking loads of new levels, paths, and experiences. You could play the game 10 different times and end up at Bowser in completely unique ways. Switch palaces permanently change levels and power-ups change your options. World has the best movement we've discussed so far, each option so simple, so easy to grab a hold of, but with a bunch of little caveats and complexities that will keep you as a student the entire way through the journey. Don't take my word for it, watch the Kaizo scene demolish what you thought was possible, mostly using Mario's base kit. Super Mario World dares you to forget its levels. Ghost houses, deep ocean trenches, and alpine climbs keep you engaged the whole way through. They even gave that sick bastard a hand in this game, with the torture known as the Special World. Play in pain as you admit defeat to multiple 80 slang words, including way cool. Yes, they're hard, but with generally fair challenges and the short length, they add up to being not terrible, and a satisfying way to end off this Mondo game. At the end of the day, all of the games I've talked about are classics, not U2, by any definition of the word. We haven't seen a brand new standard 2D Mario since New Super Mario Bros. U in 2012. The Maker games have been picking up the slack in the meantime with talented creators sometimes outdoing Nintendo's own work. Still, I'm waiting for that next big project from Nintendo because constantly they have shown their ability to innovate, improve, and redefine the genre as they did with Super Mario World. Hey guys, thank you all so much for 6,000 subscribers. I'm so happy we had like a little bit of a mini blow up with the Wario video, and I'm hoping I can turn that into more success. Bye!